All right, Mopar people, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justmoparjoe. We're moving on with the Smogger 400 build that I'm trying to get 500 horse out of. Let me show you where we are today. When I finished off with this, I was filing the ring gaps or setting my ring end gaps. I did go to 33 thousandths on that top ring, and the bottom called for 1748. So I was going to round up to 18. All of these second rings, you can look at the ends. I didn't touch any of those because when I dropped them in that big bore, they were like at 19 or 20 thousandths. So they are good. I could swap any of these onto any of those pistons and they're all the same. I checked one ring in multiple holes. Same thing with these. But I did go ahead and mark them one by one. So as I pull them out of the pack, I just went 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8. So as I go down the line, that's the way I will ring these pistons up here in a minute. As for weight and balancing, this was something that some people had a little question about, and Ed did correct me on reciprocating versus rotating mass. The way I'm going to do this, I've got 4 rod journals here. Let me show you. So this will be my front journal that has 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So the way I'm doing this, I had that one really light rod. It was like, I say really light, so 2 grams lighter than the rest. And you can see us right here. It has not been cut. I put it onto my heaviest piston. So that's 881.9. So the lightest rod with the heaviest piston, just like I showed you over here. That gives that total weight of 101.9. Some of this may be trivial, but like I said, I could swap any of these around to get what I want. I do have my spiral locks in. Everything's lubed up. I lube the pins up with this Lucas Oil assembly lube. I also have my 50-50 mix. That one's just straight oil. This one is the 50-50 mix. See how yummy that is. I like to lube bearings and stuff with that. So back to what I was saying. On my number 1 journal, I'm going to have these 2 combinations. So the 105 and 102.1, that equals 202.6. So the amount of weight on this journal at any time is the combined weights of those 2 forces going against each other, basically. But the weight being moved here, centrifugal force, centrifugal, one of those, is followed by this one. So that weight is being thrown that way as this weight is being pulled. So they're all working against each other. You know the business. So what I thought about doing, these are also very close. My 202.6. See, I had 203.6, 203.6. Those will be fine. As long as I have my lightest and my heaviest together, I think I'm good to go. So, saying all that, I'm going to go ahead and start ringing some pistons up and getting these put in the block. So I'll bring you along for a little of that process. Won't be a big deal. If you need to see an entire process, I've made that video already when I did my 413 build. So hopefully I can show you something new or different. Well, I'm certainly not reinventing the wheel here, but see that little mark? That is where I'm going to put my oil ring. And I just marked them all the same. Boom, boom, boom. If you turn, there's my number 2 ring. So it'll be 90 from the oil ring gap. And then opposite side of that, so 180 from that 90 will be my other ring gap. So my top ring here, second ring there, and then my oil rings there. I usually offset the smaller keeper rings, whatever you call those, at least an inch on the opposite side of our waffle ring. And it recommends that you put the brake, point that upward, so towards the top of the piston. So I will roll one on for you real quick so you can see it. So I rolled our waffle ring on here. The gap is pointing up towards the top. There's our thin ring. Just lay it. Some people say that you need special equipment to do all this with. You don't. Just be careful. Don't over bend the rings. These bottom ones usually flex pretty easily. There it is. And I find my gap again. See the line? Might get a little spin. There it goes. So just checking there. And then my other gap is only a 1/2 inch that way. So I just hold that with my finger, roll it on around 2 or 3 inches. It's fine. As long as they are not lined up, nothing lines up in piston ring world. You can start this one around. Roll it on with your fingers. The top rings will be harder to do, but that's okay. And feel for it to drop. That's it. Nice and free. Everything's beautiful. We move to our second ring. I have a pack here. They have dots on them. Let me show you my dot. And there it is. So the dots go upward towards the top of the block. If you remember, there'll be a little chamfer right there. The chamfer will go down. So when it's pulling, it pulls nice and downward. I'm just going to start it right here like this. You can hold it against your stomach. You can put it in a rod vise if you want to go that route. There's no wrong way of doing it, I don't guess. As long as you don't stretch this ring and mess it up real bad, it'll be fine. I don't like to let it drop into the rings on the way down. That's kind of not ideal. And this is the first one I'm doing today. By the time I get to number 8, I'll be a lot better at it, won't I? Just be careful. It's not a race. The KBs have that big gap between here. And we're dropping all the way around. Yes, you can. Oh, there it goes. So you saw that in real time. I'm going to bring it around to where my gap is here. So my gap is there. I'm ready to move on to my top ring. This is my number 1, so I will grab my number 1 ring set out of the bag, and then I will oil these dudes. So we'll find our number 1. It is on top. These rings, I can look one more time for any markings, etchings. They don't have it. I normally look for the chamfer first. I do not see any chamfer. I think it's pretty common for top rings to be able to go either direction. And it's going to end up over on that side. That's it. She's rolled in. I didn't stretch anything excessively like that. There we are. And that dude is ready to drop in. I need to get my bearing on. There we are. I always look on the back of my bearing to be sure it says standard, +10, etc. You don't want any type of strange bearing or bearing that's not supposed to be there, incorrect sizing, and it's your fault if you don't look and you slip up and stick it in there. So I've wiped my cap, I've wiped my rod half, and I'll just slide them in with my finger. That one is in nicely. Kind of check for any gaps, excessive gaps there and there. You can kind of still see on these bolts, they still have little ARP lube on them, those threads. I'm going to add more also to the underside of the heads. I'm just going step by step here. See, I'll check that bearing as well. I'll roll her in on camera so y'all can see me doing it. Drops in nicely. Remember checking these the other day. I typically pop a bearing back out, wipe, just be sure it's nothing's dirty underneath the bearing that would hold it up, mess it up, you know. Lint-free rags, always good. And my parting lines, or rather where the caps come off, just going notch to notch like that. These do have numbers. See the number engraved there, 589, I think, whatever that one is. And then they'll pull together like that in just a second. So I'll get this dude dropped in. Y'all can watch that process. back over to our engine. Got my Lucas 50/50 on a little brush here. Just brushing her on. I like to put it on the journal and on the cap, so we know everything is beautiful. Wipe your surfaces. I even like to put a little bit on the face here. There we go. See how that stuff's just staying there? It's not falling off, but it's so got a nice stringiness to it. I'll come back. I got my piston holder here. This is I think I got this at O'Reilly's a while back, but I've done a bunch of engines with it. It's starting to get worn. It has these little tits, and sometimes you can do yourself a favor by just rebending them back out every so often, so you know that they will hang over the edge of the block here, and they don't fall in that chamfer if you got a chamfer. If you saw my head gasket video, I talked a lot about that. Said the word chamfer 1,000 times. So there's my piston. This is just straight motor oil, and I will lube my rings up, get her dropped into this dude. Have her straight motor oil. You can do as much or as little as you'd like. I really like to get it in there and give my rings a little spin. Put a little on the skirts. Roll her over. May start dripping in a minute, that's fine. More is less. Skirt action. I'll take that piston. Just give them a little light spin. Be sure I know there's oil in between those rings. Oil ring, same thing. Now, since I had my little red marks, I can line them back up a lot faster. See, that one's good. This one, I'm looking for the break in the ring itself. Want to be sure, see, it's there, so it's within an inch of my marks, fine. Want to be sure it's not overlapped, and then the top ring is right there. So, I'm going to grab that piston like it's a catfish right through there. Remember, our tits go towards the bottom of the skirt. Double check my ring gaps one more time. It's your fault if they're wrong. Slide it over. Now I'm going to clamp that with my hand right there. Okay? It'll butt this piece up against your hand. I know it's kind of hard to see. Then I take my little tool. Sometimes you can get the ratcheting kind. This one does not ratchet, but just pulling her right on in. See, it's got a little bit of slip. Clamp it, and holding my thumb good and tight, just like that. You can look down it, no excessive gaps anywhere. That's a nice full floating pin there, isn't it? And I need to lube my bearing, but I'm going to use that lube from over here. So I'm going to move my camera over. This dude is ready to knock in, basically. Here we are to our engine. This would be our number 1. And when it flips over, driver's side, number 1. That's already been lubed. I got my little brush. I'm gonna put me a little bit on my journal, or on my bearing itself. Nice. Fully lubed all the way across. I left about that much piston skirt hanging out, so it will start into the block. This is a $400 piston starter. No, it's just a hammer. So the eyes, remember, if this was a smiley face, the eyes go towards the top of the block. That will put my chamfer here towards the front of the engine. When I do the opposite side, the chamfer will be towards the back. And I'll show you that in just a second. Start her in real nice, such as that. I have pre-oiled my cylinders. I can see straight through. You can have it at this lower angle if you'd like. Won't take much. The throw of the crankshaft is far out of the way. So we'll just give it a little tap. Keep a nice pressure. You can take your hammer, tap around to be sure that these tips are all in contact with the block. I'm still clear as I could be in there. That is it. Opposite hand, and I reach through and I grab that with my middle finger. I guess you could use any finger, but now we just give her light taps. Watch it as she comes in. Coming in. Now, if you get close like this, you can, if you'd like to, spin your crankshaft slowly so that it contacts, or you can just keep tapping, whatever you want to do. It's in kind of a nice spot here. I can go ahead and put my cap on, see she's lubed. Besides that being super lubed, you can still see it. We go notch to notch. Dropping her right in like that. And I will grab my bolts. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but that's fine. Pulling it together. There it is. ARP lube here and here, and on the threads of the bolts. I will not torque this down until I get both sides on. I'll show you that. So, some people like the old school speed wrench. I don't have a problem with it. Just be sure both are started. There we go. Pull my bolts down. 1, 2. And slide it back and forth even here. That's nice. I'm not going to torque this now. I'm gonna basically, I can put as much as I can on with my speed wrench, which would probably be, I don't know, 10 pounds or something. But at least I should be able to still spin my engine over. See, that's one hand with one piston in. So that's cool. And no binding, no issue. I can tell she scrapes the walls now. So that's cool. But still moves freely. I will do my number 2 piston now. Got 1 and 2 in here on this first journal. You can see them, look pretty sanitary. I did not torque these yet, but I am now. Something good, and Ed and I discussed this, just having them both in before you try to torque one. It keeps, you know, that pin from sliding as much. Also, we're going to get this torqued up. I'll check our gap there between these 2 rods, that clearance. So yeah, won't take me just a second. I'll do it in 2 steps, probably 35, and then we're finishing with 63. So all I've got here is my crank bolt in. They make a tool that will go over the snout of this. I don't have one. I might get one someday. I've been talking about it. And just a short ratchet. But I'm pretty bad about spinning an engine several times as I'm building it, just to know if there's a hard spot, a tight spot, or whatever. I did not check that side clearance yet, but it's got a little bit. It's probably going to be fine. With a lot of aftermarket rods, you'll notice that they do have excessive side clearance, and there's not really anything you can do about it. But with this deal here, see how she spins? I mean, she's pretty free flowing. That little short stroke doesn't take much. There we go. Our pistons showing our happy face, meaning the valve reliefs are up. Same thing over here. Yep. And that one has my line on it just to show you that they are the same size, side to side. All I lack now is getting these others in. So I went ahead and just hung my gauge in here so you can kind of see. It had a little bit of pull to it. And that is there it is. 20 thousandths feeler gauge. Like I said, the majority of aftermarket rods, it's going to be a little excessive. I don't think it super matters. The spec in the Mopar book here, show you that dude, how to rebuild a big block Mopar. That was Svensson. I always mess that up, but my Norwegian Scandinavian viewers will correct me on that. They want 9 to 17 thousandths of an inch. So rods are held tightly with the chamfer side of each rod facing outward. I showed you that. So our chamfers go toward the side and toward the side. This is 20 thousandths. It is totally fine. Never had an issue and probably won't with this one. So I'll keep pushing forward on it. And here we are. I will get my camera set up, just show you how. I can do it right here, actually. Look how beautifully smooth we are rolling. That short stroke, I think this thing's gonna rev like a buzzsaw, so it should be a lot of fun. I appreciate y'all following along with this build. Coming up, I gotta get my roller cam stuck in here and more odds and ends, but she's coming together. I feel pretty good about it. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch you next time.